Dr. J, this is the last in our series of heart health Q&A videos for Heart Month. And people, if you're listening, if you're on the YouTube page, obviously all the other ones will be right a page back from this one. So today we're going to be talking about inflammation and C-reactive protein. If you're not familiar with C-reactive protein, it is on a blood test the marker that indicates inflammation, systemic inflammation in the body, not related to one specific area. People may have heard that inflammation is linked to almost every disease. Do genes help with how our bodies handle inflammation if we have it, or are they not even involved in any of that?
They very much are involved in regulating inflammation, and certain genetic variants can increase the risk of inflammation. The whole concept of our genes load the gun and our diet and lifestyles pull the trigger is very much true, especially when it comes to inflammation, because there are certain things we do in our diet that are pro-inflammatory and certain things we do that are anti-inflammatory. If you have certain genetic variants that are leaning toward pro-inflammatory and you load up the gun with a diet that has inflammatory things in it, which is the majority of foods that America eats, then you're going to have a higher incidence of inflammation. And so it's a bad cycle too, because you go to the doctor and they say, oh, we're going to give you an anti-inflammatory. That tears up your stomach. And then you go back and say, I'm having stomach troubles. And then they put you on Pepcid to shut that down. And now you've shut down the absorption of nutrients to your body, blah, blah, blah. It's a vicious cycle. So there are so many things you can do to reduce inflammation with your diet, with lifestyle, with supplementations. One of the risk factors that's biggest in my mind is mitochondrial function. When we get damage to the mitochondria, which is the little cells, the little organelles inside our cells that produce energy, they're easily damaged by the environment, by chemicals, pesticides, heavy metals, radiation, electromagnetic fields, certain medications, and especially antibiotics. When those get damaged, then our body starts to build up inflammation. We produce things like superoxide and peroxynitrite, which are some of the most inflammatory molecules that our body makes. So often when I see somebody who's got a lot of pain and inflammation, that's an area that I'll focus on. But with my happy genes, you can get that tested. But we're talking about environment, where the environment has damaged cells. You don't see that as much on a genetic test, but the questionnaire that we give people will suss that out. Okay, I've got fatigue, I've got weight gain, I've got pain, I've got inflammation, my CRP is high. And then the algorithm that we've designed says, oh, we have mitochondrial damage. They're going to need support in that area. So we take into account those factors that are our diet, lifestyle, and then design our programs around that, not just the genes that you might have. So it's that interplay.
So let's talk about the commonly accepted anti-inflammatory foods. There's a whole world out there saying you should take this, that, and the other. And our favorite bugaboo is what?
Turmeric.
Turmeric. Just talk a little bit about why there isn't one anti-inflammatory food for all people.
Yeah, it's a good point, because turmeric has a lot of advertising behind it. Whoever owns turmeric is good at marketing, because it is a great anti-inflammatory. It has an amazing track record of reducing inflammation and repairing joints, etc. However, for somebody who's got genetic variants in the tryptophan hydroxylase enzyme or the MAO enzyme, turmeric is a bad idea, because it can actually slow down that enzyme even further and cause a lot of irritation. Actually, build up of serotonin, which in itself is inflammatory. Serotonin is an inflammatory neurochemical. Who knew?
Who knew? Exactly.
Too much of that is going to cause inflammation. And so it can backfire in those people. When they take turmeric, it slows down that enzyme and then their serotonin builds up. That's why you want to get your genes tested before you do those anti-inflammatory kind of things.
Yeah. Any other things you can think of that the world says is anti-inflammatory that perhaps are not good for everybody?
Yeah, the fats. And so essential
Hey,
fatty
don't take away my cheese, girl.
Oh, no, I wouldn't do that. No, so essential fatty acids are absolutely anti-inflammatory. But if you have certain genetic variants where your gallbladder isn't working correctly and you can't break those fats down, they can become a problem. And or if you've had your gallbladder removed, taking essential fatty acids like that can also backfire because they can turn rancid or they can cause gastrointestinal kind of problems, which can increase inflammation. So it's important to know the whole story with a patient, with our clients. And that's why we have you work with a healthcare practitioner, because they will take that history. Do you still have your gallbladder? Oh, that's okay. If you do, then fine. If you don't, then they're going to look at adding, for sure, getting the inflammation down, because those people who have their gallbladder removed are almost always going to have inflammation because they can't absorb the fats that actually reduce inflammation in the body. And they will look at what can we give you that'll replace what your gallbladder should have done, maybe some bile salts or something in that category, and then they can increase the essential fatty acids that actually reduce inflammation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So are autoimmune diseases or problems a problem of inflammation in some regard, or are they not related?
Yeah, very much. I think they're cofactors. So
Okay.
they're the HLA variants, the human leukocyte antigen. These are people that have inherited that gene are prone to autoimmune conditions. And what happens is the body attacks itself. And in that attack, we create a lot of inflammation for sure. We look at those particular genetic variants and we design the diet and lifestyle around that as well. And we look at something called mast cell activation syndrome, which is often associated with those HLA variants, where gluten is a good example of certain people when they eat gluten and they have that genetic variant. It causes an immune response where the mast cells explode and release histamine and serotonin and prostaglandins, and those are highly inflammatory molecules. Yeah, it's like the fireman at the fire. He didn't cause the fire, but he's
He's
associated.
adjacent. He's fire adjacent.
Yeah, exactly. The body is trying to somehow put out the fire, but there's inflammation created there. So it's, yeah, they're cofactors.
So interesting. And so really, because we always bring lifestyle into this, it doesn't sound to me like there's a lifestyle aspect of inflammation, but maybe there is. Is stress cause inflammation?
Yeah, stress makes everything worse for
Oh,
sure. It uses up our ATP, which we need to make the mitochondria run correctly, which can lead to inflammation. And gosh, it increases cortisol, which reduces our immune function. Cortisol is actually an anti-inflammatory initially, but over
mhm.
time it actually creates inflammation. Yeah, stress makes everything worse for sure. And when it comes to stress too, we look at this is where understanding the genes on a deeper level, like the COMT enzyme our genes code for, breaks down adrenaline. And adrenaline is our stress hormone. If you're one of those people that have a genetic variant there and you don't break down adrenaline easily, then you are prone to high stress and therefore prone to inflammation. And so
Mm.
it's not always a one-to-one correlation between here's the gene that causes inflammation. It's looking at the biochemistry and how they relate to each other and how do we balance all those pathways so that inflammation is reduced, because inflammation is implicated in cancers and heart disease and
Mhm.
brain dysfunction. Everything you can think of pretty much is going to have inflammation at the root of it.
And so there is always a lifestyle component.
Yeah.
Again, I have to say not always, because I'm sure there are some genes that are pretty much you got that gene, you're getting that thing. But for most of us and for most of the more common lifestyle diseases, that word lifestyle is important because we have something to do with how it occurs in our body.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's our food choices. It's our, do we get enough sleep? Do we make time in our lives to get sleep? Do we make time for rest and relaxation and de-stressing, meditation? All of those things can really help the overall picture, reducing our exposure to toxins. It's getting exercise that doesn't stress you. If we're pushing ourselves to exercise too much, that can actually increase inflammation and
Mhm.
stress. It's about knowing your body's limits and listening to your body. Does that hurt when you do that? It's probably creating some damage.
I recently interviewed a man who's a Feldenkrais expert, and he said the thing that we've lost track of is that pain is the body's way of saying back off. Become a pain is good kind of culture. But in fact, it does create stress in the body and then more inflammation. And like you said, that vicious circle of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, exactly.
Not good.
So with my happy genes, we look at, okay, let's check your mitochondria. Is it working correctly? Do you have genes there or do you have some of the symptoms of it? So we correct things there first, or the algorithm does, I should say. And then we look at the blood sugar because that can actually create a lot of inflammation as well. And then we look at the nitric oxide pathway. So we look at, again, interplay of all these different pathways has a profound effect on all of those things.
Hmm. Which is why I love my Happy Genes, which is why I'm here. There's a deep honesty about the science behind your company and your knowledge, and then what we impart to the practitioners is not what I see in other companies. Not to say that other companies are bad, that they don't give you some benefit by giving you a report on your genetics. But if you truly want to understand your genetics and use that information for a healthy life now and a better aging, right? We don't want to just live till the end. We want to enjoy life till the end.
Yeah, I think we're unique in the genetic testing world for sure, is that understanding. I keep looking at different companies, and I know you do too. You get your genes tested by all these different companies, and they are pretty linear. Here's this gene, take this thing,
Mhm.
or eat this food. Nobody's really looking at that interplay of the biochemistry like we are. And you don't have to understand it. The algorithm
Right.
does it for you, which is the nice part because it's a lot. I realize it's a dense topic and it's a lot to understand. That's why I created the software that would do it.
The fun thing is if you're a geek like me, you can, as somebody who gets a report, you see your genes, you can click on that gene and it'll take you to the website that explains that gene. And even within the My Happy Genes report, it'll pull up a thing like you showed before. Underneath that, your mom's cardiovascular risk slider, there was a whole commentary about the other things that it will affect, that these genes
Right.
will, in combination, work together.
Yeah. Can I show you just a quick what you're talking about
Yeah.
there? Let me just share my screen here. So yeah, so we're looking at the genetic report. This is the table that you get. And so let's look at this one because this one is associated with high cholesterol. And this is again my mother's report. And you can see genetic variants here in this ACAT are associated with high cholesterol, atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease risk, gallbladder imbalances, weight imbalances, type 2 diabetes, and which she had all of those, right? But they were all modified by our algorithm. So when you click on this, it'll take you right to where I found that study. This one was done by National Institute of Health and located in the National Library of Medicine. And this is from PubMed, and it looks at what is that gene, what does it do, how does it affect cardiovascular disease? So if you're a nerd like GC and you want to take a deep dive into how does this all work, where did she get that information? What does it all mean? It's all right there. And then ACE is another one. This one is associated with blood pressure imbalance. And you can see increased arterial pressure here. And there's the
And this
study.
is what they get the medication called an ACE inhibitor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was interesting because those people with genetic variants here were more susceptible to COVID infections.
Oh, interesting. And bipolar disorder.
So that's how we look at this. The red ones here are homozygous variants. Both parents gave you the wrong code for that enzyme. Green means you got the right code from both parents, and yellow means one parent gave you the wrong code.
Can't figure out which parent if you want to be mad at them.
I know, right? Mom, dang it. This one is another one real quick, associated with hypertension here and salt sensitivity. So for these people, it's a good idea to avoid salt, and they respond better to calcium channel blockers if they do need to go on some kind of blood pressure medication. But
Mhm.
it is associated with high blood pressure. So that's how we look at your genes and how this algorithm designs diet and lifestyle. It'll say, watch the salt, and it'll say different lifestyle factors are needed, or here are the supplements that you need to balance this.
So if you're one of those people and you've been thinking about getting your genes tested, why wait? Just go for it. It's the beginning of the new year, still, really, February. Imagine how you could feel in a few months if you've been struggling. And many of your patients, Dr. J, and the practitioners' patients are people that have been told it's all in their head. There's nothing we can do for you. We don't know why this is happening. You've had a lot of success with patients like that. So if that is you listening, I would say give it a try. What do you got to lose?
I agree.
So if anybody listening has a topic for a Q&A, just send it to us at info@myhappygenes.com. And until next time, all of you be well. Thank you, Dr. J, as always.
Thanks, GC.